So I'm going to be doing some live streaming of my practice sessions again. It's been a while since I've done that. This time I'm going to call it Practicing on a Dime of Time because I have to practice in small little clips right now because I'm recovering from having tennis elbow. I still have it in my left arm. So I have to be really careful about my practice time. Also, I don't have a lot of time to practice. I have a part-time job that has nothing to do with music. My husband also uses the music studio to teach a lot of the time. So my time is usually in little tiny blips of time, which is why I'm calling it Practicing on a Dime of Time. Still trying to remember that. So I have a recital I'm preparing for. I'm accompanying a singer in a couple of weeks. And I have done a lot of this stuff before, but I want to bring it up to a level that I'm really happy with. And so I'm going to start with one of the pieces on that program, Love in the Dictionary by Celius Doherty. I have to admit it's not one of my favorite pieces. I find it really hard to have it hang together in a way that feels at all decent because it's basically all it is defining love as it is in the dictionary. So it's a dictionary entry. So musically, it's kind of disjunct at points. But anyway, there's some licks in there that are uncomfortable. So my goal is to practice for about 10 minutes here. And then I'll take a break and come back and practice another 10 minutes on something else. So let's see what I can do with this piece in 10 minutes. And I'll be narrating as I go along. So you can see what's going on in my head, hopefully. All right, so right now I'm going to look for the passages I have marked as being the most difficult. There aren't that many in here because I think I'm not done marking them. But I'm going to at least start with the one I do have marked. Or there's two of them, I guess. All right. I often start off a practice on a hard passage doing hands separately, so I can really make sure that my brain is comprehending what I'm doing and making some sense of it instead of just splatting and trying to make it all happen at once. So here we go, just a few measures worth. All right, so even just in doing that, I realized that I had a moment of doubt about one of the notes, whether or not it was flat or natural. Just go ahead and write it in so that I won't have that niggling thought anymore. The first part of that little passage is not so bad, so I'm going to go right to the hardest part. It's just very chromatic. And now I'm realizing I'm not sure of a good fingering, so that's partly, I think, a problem. So I have a couple choices. I just tried both of them quickly. I'm gonna write in one of them that I think I prefer, and if it doesn't work, if I keep making mistakes, I'll try the other one. That felt really good. I'll do it again. So it's basically all just very chromatic. There's only one note that's repeated. And that's good for me to know, so I'm not having to read every note as I go. So here's the repeated note here. Otherwise, until the end, it's all just chromatic. Okay, now I'm going to check on the right hand, see how he's doing. straightforward, but the downbeat of the third measure is really crunchy harmonically, and whenever that happens, I like to pay attention to the crunchiness, because oftentimes that's something that will make me feel nervous that I'm making a mistake. So I make sure that I understand what it needs to sound like, and really ingrain it. So I'm just going to sit there and enjoy it for a sec. Then it resolves. Oh, that's great. See, now I like it. I didn't like it at first, but now that I understand it, I want to keep playing it that way because it's so great, so crunchy. So I'm going to add the hands together now, slowly, a little bit slower. Great. So now I'm going to stop on that downbeat that I was talking about with the crunchy chord, again, to now hear how the crunchy harmony in the right hand goes with the left hand, so that that doesn't feel weird either. I really lean into it. Enjoy it. Great. I really love that chord. The other thing I just realized is that that crunchy chord is the beginning of this great melody in the top voice. So I'm going to make sure I really bring that out this next time, because I think that'll help to add some interest. Yeah, that feels really good. Another thing that's cool about that is I just realized that this line there is an echo of what the voice just did. That's the voice, and then I do. So very cool. Now I've isolated that problem spot, so now that I feel comfortable with that, I'm going to back up a little bit and make sure I can get into that smoothly. So that felt really good. The whole time while I'm doing this, I'm replaying in my brain all the details that I've been working out in the minutes leading up to that, to make sure I'm not just doing it from repetition. I don't have time to do tons of repetitions. So I always have this narration going on in my head. So I'm going to do that again, just from the same place. Good, I just played a wrong note. Yay! Because I was realizing a fingering I need to write in. That felt really good to me. And because that was a repetition, I decided to push myself a little more. And while I was doing that repetition, I made sure that I was hearing the vocal part and the vocal text in my head while I was playing, to make it a little bit more complicated for myself. Yeah, and it sets me up well. All right, I have to fix that thing I just messed up. So where was it? There's sort of two different issues. I had a fingering thing. Yeah, that fingering will work. I played E flat. I like that better. Okay. I'm going to go back to where I was before and make sure I can link those together. So now I just arrived at my next chunk that's an issue. So here we go. Just for grins and to make things exciting, I'm going to start with my right hand this time. Starts off with the same chord that repeats. Yeah, just thick chords and kind of crunchy. It's asking for problems. So I'm going to slowly go through, and one thing I do with chords is I mark and make sure I know which notes actually stay the same between two different chords, because that'll make it easier. So for these first two chords, the middle two notes stay exactly the same. So it's just the octave, the outer notes, that move. So I just keep those middle notes sustained. It's kind of a way of reinforcing with myself, you don't have to think about those notes. So now I'm going to play them as written. Okay, now the next chord, all the notes change. So that's probably the hardest one, hardest transition. But the top two voices move down in thirds. So that might be something to latch on to for me. Now I'll do the right hand from the beginning of the chunk. Not bad, again. I wasn't narrating as much as I would like to be, so here I go again. And because I was narrating, my body was much more relaxed. I could really sense that. So cool. All right, now I'm going to switch over to the left hand, see what's going on there. Again, the first measure isn't so bad. All right. So the F is going to stay the same. All the other notes change, so I'm going to sustain the F. I need to mark that it stays the same. Again. That's easy. Stay the same on the F. Okay. Now, the E flat stays the same, but everything else moves. Okay. E flat stays the same. But I'm going to have to change fingering because of the chord. That is not pretty. And I have a small hand, and my left arm is the one that's giving me trouble. I may end up leaving a note out. Don't tell anybody. So that's leaving a note out in the left hand. Let's add it back in, see if we're going to miss it. I really don't think I'm going to miss it, so I'm going to go ahead and take that C out. It's just asking for trouble. So F stays the same. Oh no. E flat stays the same. Now all the notes are different. And the middle two notes stay the same. Complicated. So going from these last two chords are tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm creating a narration in my head using my knowledge of what notes stay the same. And I'm going to try, based on that narration, to play it without looking at the music. So the B flat and A flat are going to stay the same, and the outer voices go to a D natural octave. I'm just going to toggle back and forth. I'm not looking at the music. for fun, I'm going to start on the second chord and toggle the other way. Okay, now I'm going to back up and try to work it in context with my narration in my head. Again, not bad. So I already have the end of that memorized because of my narration and my little game with myself. All right, now I'm going to put both hands together. As I always do that after doing hands separately, I back down the tempo a little bit because I'm doubling the thought process. So I want to slow down, make it easier. Not bad, again. I was playing a wrong note. Here. I assumed it was an octave B flat, but it's actually B flat D. So why did the composer do that? That was my version. That's a different richness in there, I think. So maybe that's why the composer did that. So I will need to make sure I review that since I had mislearned that. All right, I'm going to play that whole section again. Great. So since these chunks that I had to work on were in the same vicinity, I'm going to go back to the first one and make sure I can play through that little tricky section. Great. So that wasn't perfect, but it's definitely a lot closer than it was 12, 13 minutes ago. So for now, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to take a little break, give my hands a rest, and then I'll be back to do another 10 minutes.